Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle, joined by two co-hosts here. I have Goody. Welcome back, brother. Good to see you. Hall seems like he's going through an airport terminal at this moment in time. Sounds a lot like what happened last night with Washington. He doesn't have his headphones in, so he can't hear me right now talking crap. But the title of tonight's episode is A Loss of Opportunity. I think it's a perfect kind of title for this overall episode to kind of state with what happened with Washington losing 28-7. But without further ado, what's up, Goody? What's up, Hall?
How we doing, folks?
Yo, and make sure you mute yourself because your background is so dang loud. But the first question I have written out for you boys, in your opinion, Goody, what went wrong last night?
The one thing amongst quite a few things that I say would be my pick for what went wrong was that we got away from the run. You know, it wasn't looking the best, but the way that we were getting up and down the field on those, first handful of drives where we were getting up and down the field with success, a lot of those drives had a lot of run mixed into it, whether they were for big yardage or short yardage, but we were being consistent with it, and that obviously gives you more of a balance as an offense. So I believe that went hand in hand with how we were able to get up and down the field so easily. Granted, we did have shorter field position due to the turnovers, but getting away from the run. I think it was about the third quarter, about 2 minutes left, and I'm just kind of retracking in my head. I'm like, man, something's off. We looked bad in the second half, and it just dawned on me. I said, man, Cliff, he got away from the run too soon.
Yeah, I think I'm on the par with you there. I think overall in their losses, it's the fact that they do go away from the run, and some of it is not at their own fault because they get down early, like in the Atlanta game or the Green Bay game. They kind of have to abandon things, but I think overall it's the having the consistency of the running game, because a couple weeks ago they were number one in rushing yards in the NFL, and then it just seems like ever since Chicago they haven't been able to move the football. What would you say went wrong last night, Hall?
I think it was the second half, just lack of pressure. If you go back to the first half, obviously they're causing turnovers. They were getting after Mahomes, whether it was Jacob Martin getting a couple sacks or getting a couple pressures on him. You saw Kinlaw get in his face a couple times. Payne was in the backfield. Johnny Newton was in the backfield. And it seemed like in the second half, even when Mahomes, I think it was 4 plays or something like that, he had between 6 to 8 seconds to just sit in the pocket, maneuver around,
right,
and eventually hit somebody down the field or the little dump off to Travis Kelce, whatever it may be. And I think that the lack of – because if you think about it, it took him so long to get the ball off from the pocket because the zone that they were playing was actually kind of working to an extent because no one was really coming uncovered in the zone. So Pat Mahomes is having to hold on to the ball a little bit longer. The problem is with a guy like Mahomes, when he holds on to the ball, he's such a good creator inside the pocket and outside the pocket that he's going to kill you that way. And if you're not getting consistent pressure on him and pushing the pocket from the middle or coming from the outside, kind of speeding his process up, it's going to be 7-on-7 for a guy like Mahomes. So just overall, I think it was the lack of pressure in the second half really just did them in, and they couldn't get a stop on defense due to that.
Yeah, I definitely think from the get-go, the fumble by Debo just changed the arc of the game and how things were going. I look, as much as I love the interception from Lattimore where he lined up in the slot there, Pat Mahomes throws that back shoulder throw on the go route, and he's able to bring that thing in at the sideline. That was a fantastic catch. He deserves a lot of credit. But I do think that the missed fumble recovery that was right in front of him was a big one as well. That's one of those that could have changed things, gotten you more momentum, gotten you back into the game. And this is something I yell at my own players about. Stop trying to scoop it, fall on it. You want to make sure that you're wedging yourself away from that guy so he doesn't have the ability to get it back from you. But, as much as you can't get on Marshawn, he was like the second highest graded player for Washington last night behind Terry McLaurin with like an 89 rating from PFF. So obviously he did his job in a big way. But it's, again, in my opinion, I agree with Goody that it's the run game offensively that doesn't really do anything for you when you truly, truly need it. And they weren't down early in this game. They could have continued to run the football, control the time of possession. They lost that. They had nearly 26 minutes of time of possession where Kansas City had 34. So that difference there, being able to control drives and get down the field, I think is immense, especially going against an offense like Kansas City. I think that we all kind of felt that way, seeing that after those 2 turnovers, you're sitting there saying, yeah, but how long is that going to last? And the offense not being able to capitalize on those opportunities, you kind of knew at that point, like, all right, this is how this one's going to go. But it sucks because in the second half last night, Hall, I'll be honest with you, I was disappointed. Just the way that they came out, like you could tell that it was floodgates, and
that's what I mean. That was my point, where it was like in the first half, they had so much energy. They had so much, like, it almost kind of reminds you of last season, where it's like it's us against the world, and we're going to go out and show and prove that we're that team that deserves to be on this stage against this team, and we can hang and play with this team. And it just seemed like in the second half, that entire type of mindset just disappeared. And that's, like I said, that trickled down to the lack of the running game, the lack of the pass rush, and then eventually, like you said, the floodgates just open it up because Mahomes is basically just playing 7-on-7.
Yeah, and but I want to get to this next one. Hall, I'll go to you first. Are there any positives from this game? As much as we want to be doom and gloom on this Reaction Tuesday.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I'll go to you next. Don't worry.
No problem.
I would say positive is whenever, obviously, Dorrance Armstrong going down, a lot of people were saying, where's the pass rush going to come from? How are they going to be able to generate a pass rush? All that. And then a guy like Jacob Martin, who did the pregame speech, brought the energy in the pregame speech and took that right to the field. And if you go back to last week against Dallas as well, I think he has like 14 total pressures, 2.5, 3.5 sacks, something like that, and a couple tackles for loss. So he's definitely a guy that with a more expanded role has seemed to step up and step into that role and really start producing. And then I would say just offensively, that first half, even though they didn't capitalize when they got down inside the red zone and on the other side of the field to get points against Kansas City, it was a positive for me seeing Debo and Terry back on the field and then being able to move the ball consistently against a really good Kansas City Chiefs defense in the first half. And obviously you can say Terry was a positive just because everyone's been killing him on Twitter, social media, and he just came out and did what he'd been doing for pretty much his whole career. So if I had to take any positives from a second half beatdown like that would be those 3.
For me personally, it's not going to be anything grand scheme. I do think Jacob Martin showing up again was fantastic. I said it last week that his explosion against Dallas was good to see, that you definitely needed that coming off the bench, right? But I think the younger guys getting their snaps called in this game, like we saw Tyler Owens, you saw Jordan McGee back there with Bobby doing a very good job being very fast. He did have some mental hiccups along with Tyler Owens, but this is kind of why you want to get those hiccups out now. Like, you would love for that to be able to happen in preseason, but unfortunately that's where we are right now. And it's just unfortunate overall because early on in that game, the defense did enough to be able to help the offense out, and going back to that complementary football that Dan Quinn talks about. So I'll say that the young guys getting their reps in, and I can't go saying positives without talking about Terry coming into that game and being the absolute difference maker that he is. And we've been clamoring for more offensive firepower, and we got it last night. It's just unfortunate that we might not have it again. But we'll see how it plays out. Hopefully we'll be able to see 17 more. What about you, Goody?
Yeah, so the one that I think I have 2. One would be Terry McLaurin. You know,
Right.
I gotta say it. That was a very positive response to him being, out for several weeks or, 3-4 weeks.
Right.
And I don't know if it's a direct correlation of the way that we moved the ball so well throughout those first few drives just by having him back on the field. I know he was kind of coming on and off at times, but um, there has to be a direct correlation to that. Either that or the game script out the gate was very, very stacked in terms of how we were moving the ball. But you can't look at it and not say when he goes out there and makes those two ridiculous catches, that's who Terry is.
Yeah.
That's the Terry that we all know. And guess what? He's been out 4 weeks. He comes back in, brightest lights, and he makes those ridiculous plays. The refs doubted it, but they all got overturned because he was in bounds. So for me, like that's definitely a positive because a lot of people are ready to, kick Terry off the boat. And shame on you if that's, shame on those who are like that. But for him to come back and just show like, hey, I still do this like with my eyes closed, very encouraging. And the second thing that I would say that was kind of this may be not a popular opinion, but I do have to give credit to the defense for the way that they were holding their ground. They got the 2 turnovers. They could have had another one, like you said, if Lattimore would have fallen on the ball. But they held their weight. Unfortunately, the offense was not being able to pull it through. And we do have a pretty successful offense once we get down in that area of the field. So for those two things to not align made the defense kind of look like they took the blame for it because of the score. But the defense put us in position to win.
Yeah, and I think Hall said it really well in terms of what happened with that second half, right? Because going into the halftime, Kansas City had plenty of enough time to be able to get downfield, get a field goal, and they were able to get off the field there, force the penalty, the grounding on Pat Mahomes, which forced it to go to overtime. But they got off the field. Like I was sitting there thinking, like, okay, they're gonna give up something here. How many points are they gonna give up? And so like they ended the half the right way, but then come out in the second half and they immediately charge down the field. Quan Martin gets that penalty, puts them in great position. They have Pat Mahomes up against the wall, and then he's able to just slip out of there and get that ball out to Kareem Hunt based on the miscommunication and just the mental lapses, you could say, in defensively where, like, I understand we're trying to fix it. I wholeheartedly understand that. It's just unfortunate to see the continuing issues, even though they tried simplifying things. And that's why you ultimately don't put younger guys in because of that kind of situation. But, you live by the sword, you die by the sword in that sense. But the other positive I'd like to highlight is that they used Frankie on the line a lot last night. And this is something I've been talking about for a while now, using Bobby and Luvu more so on the line in a rushing kind of sense. And I'm glad to see that they've kind of turned the corner on that a little bit. I thought Jeremy Reeves was absolutely setting the tone for this football team defensively last night. He was coming up and doing what he usually does and coming up making hits. Is like, let's see that every single week, brother. Keep working hard, keep doing your thing, believe in you. Just got to keep making sure that keeps going on. Now, Goody, my next question for you. Laramie Tunsil went out of the game. I think, what was it? Was it a calf?
Hamstring.
Yeah, hamstring.
So he goes out with his hamstring, comes back in for a little bit. Brandon Coleman steps in at left tackle for him. But then Laramie leaves again after that. And so we don't know the future of what's going on with Laramie. What do you think is going to happen? And if Laramie doesn't go, who gets to start at left tackle in your opinion?
Yeah, that's the story of the season, right? You really can't draw it up. So it's almost every week you go in just like, all right, I hope we don't lose another one. But we're losing our starting premier left tackle that we picked up in the offseason that was going to help take us to that next level. At this point, you're kind of numb to it because you've had so many injuries in so many places across the board all season, even though the season, we're about a quarter way through, a little bit more. So for him to go down was just like one of those, you just roll your eyes like, all right, here we go. It's just one of those seasons. Let's dog it out. Let's see what this team's really got in guts. But I do think that Brandon Coleman did step up. I didn't really see too much of I didn't really see too much individual work from him, but I didn't feel like they were getting more pressure on us because Tunsil was out. So I feel like Coleman was in there. He definitely does have the experience, if not just muscle memory from being that left tackle for a majority of the last season, especially towards the end. But he was a player of ours that was taking a lot of heat for being benched, and coach wasn't really explaining what his reason for him not playing was. So, he gets another opportunity here. If Tunsil can't go, then we have somebody that really held down the position for the last season. So, and I'm sure he's got something to prove as well. But it's a bummer. But hey, this is where you find out who you really got.
I'm with you there. I know many would disagree with me. But if Laramie does miss time, I do think the best course of action is moving Josh Connerly to the left tackle, as he is very familiar with that position. And as of right now, he's playing like a guy who doesn't have much confidence. And so if he is at a position that he is not very comfortable with, not all the way in his shoes, so to speak, right? Like if you give him that 1 week to be able to get back to left tackle to say like you can play in this league, like you have the attribute to be able to do that back to your comfortable position. Maybe just giving him a little bit of boost to help him on that right side. Because to be perfectly honest, in any sort of workforce job that you get into, if you're forced to something you're not really familiar with and you kind of go through the ringer, going through some crazy circumstances of, in Josh Connerly's case, of going through a gauntlet of defensive ends, you kind of start doubting yourself and you don't play to the high caliber you're supposed to play at. So, in my opinion, I think the best course of action is moving Connerly to left tackle if Laramie doesn't play, keeping Brandon Coleman as your kind of guard replacement, and then possibly doing Wiley or Trent Scott over on the right side for the time being. That's my personal opinion. I know the Hall doesn't feel that way. Wants Connerly to stay at where he's at the right side, and I get it. You want him to keep building and keep building. It's just I'm looking at it as almost like a possibility for a spark to be able to meet that production, that high level of productivity with a little bit of a confidence bounce and helping him out a little bit. But that's just my kind of theory on it. Hopefully, it would help him out.
No, I 100% understand that. You want to, especially after it seemed like they were kind of building a little bit more momentum last night on offense,
Right.
and then they get to that third down, or it was a fourth down. They get to that fourth down, and it seems like everyone on the line, everyone was in communication on the line. Hey, we're going to slide. We're going to slide to the left, and the free rusher is going to be on Marcus to like beat him because it was, I think it was cover zero or something like that, or it was all out blitz or something like that. But anyway, Connerly went to the right, and it was a free run at Marcus Mariota. It was a fourth down. That's when he like hit the ball on the ground because he was so like frustrated or whatever. So
Yeah.
I get that. Like, hey, put him on the left side. Let him go back to what he's naturally known from college and probably high school, and let him get a little bit of a confidence bump, a little bit of a confidence builder. And once Laramie's back, move him back to the right side and let's get him back on the right and keep him working there. But I would say that what if the opposite happens? What if you put him on the left side and he's still getting beat?
Have some
Now his
optimism,
confidence,
man.
I know. I'm saying now his confidence is all the way shot. So now it's like, well, I was already kind of struggling on the right, even though it's like it's newer to me. I'm still working at it. Let me go back to my natural position. Now I'm struggling here. It's kind of like, okay, what am I going to be really good at? And so that's why I'm kind of like, and I used the example of Morgan Moses. When Morgan Moses got here his first year, people wanted to eject that man into the sun, like get him off my team right now.
Right.
8, 9, 10 years later, he's still holding it down at right tackle for us until we moved
I'm
on.
a big fan of Morgan Moses when he was here, man.
Yeah, that was my guy. And look, I was one of the fans. I was like,
That was a
really?
guest.
Like,
That's a guest of our show that we had
that
on.
was one of our first like big guests, the first big guest.
Yeah.
But yeah. So it's like I was one of those fans. I was like, y'all drafted him in the third round, and y'all throwing him out there, like, really? And like I said, 8, 9 years later, I'm like, Morgan Moses was that dude at right tackle. He was a top 5, top 7 left or right tackle. So I just feel like give the young man some time, let him keep working at it, let him keep getting more confident on the right side, let him keep building there, and hopefully down the stretch, just like in training camp, everyone said first half of training camp or OTAs, it was like, I don't know about this Josh Connerly thing. And then by the end of training camp, people were like, you know what? He showed so much improvement. He'll probably be the day one starter. So I just feel like let him keep building, let him keep working at it, and hopefully by week 17, 18, whatever it is, everyone's going into the offseason like, all right, we got our two bookends. We're solidified there. We got our center. We got our right guard and Cosme. Let's just work on this left guard situation. Chris Paul, Brandon Coleman, is he stepping back in? Who knows? But I just feel like let the young man keep working there and let him keep trying to build confidence on that right side.
Yeah,
And I would put Brandon Coleman at left tackle, obviously.
I know. My big concern, I like Brandon. It's just last year one of the big issues with this offense was having to use a lot of chips on the left side to help Brandon.
Yeah.
And if we're going to go in with that mindset saying that, then we need to also consider the fact that we're going to need a chip on the right side as well. Judging with how things are going is my own, like obviously he's growing, getting bigger, getting better, but it's almost like now we're having to do chips on both sides, and now we're having less guys running routes, which I would like to get away from.
They were chipping all last year, and the offense was moving so efficiently. And then all of a sudden, this year, we don't need a chip. More guys out in the routes.
Right. That's a good point.
What are we doing? No, but I mean, I'm kind of halfway joking, but yeah.
You do have a point with it, though. Obviously, circumstances are different just a little bit, but let's go to our fan questions that were submitted. This first one to you, Goody. This is from the Colonel. He says Rico Street Scores commented recently that the identity of our team is old and slow. To be fair, we do have the oldest team in the league and have lost multiple foot races with opposing running backs and receivers the past several games. Is old and slow our issue, or can this be remedied simply by getting our injured healed up and back on the field? I'm sorry, man. I'm tired.
No, okay. So yeah, I wouldn't. I'm not ready to pull the age card on any of it. Whereas it could have an impact, you can see in the older players. Obviously Bobby Wagner is getting up there. He lost a step. That's inevitable. I mean, even Zach Ertz has lost a step. He's still productive and effective, same as Bobby, but they've obviously lost a step. So I'm not gonna really put it on the age. I would say, you can't go into your season losing all of your players in these very important positions of the game and expect to have the same results as last year or to have just success in general. So the compilation of these injuries has really started to take its toll. As you can see, it's week in and week out. Players that we brought in specifically for this year to build this team in a way that they saw they could improve it. You're talking about Dietrich Wise, Will Harris, Tunsil, Terry, Debo, Jay. Can we keep going here? Like, how do you build on something? How do you improve, or how do you even progress when you're losing those guys that you're banking on? So I have to say that this is all due to, not all due to, but mostly due to the injuries. And the only remedy is to get healthy. And, again, it gives the other guys a chance to step up and see what your guts of your team really are. Because having this kind of intel, you don't really get to use, you don't get to have or access when you don't have these guys lower on the depth chart actually getting valuable minutes because your starters are there. So this could help. I'm a very optimistic person. So Adam Peters, scouting, whoever's making those personnel decisions, they're getting a chance to, take a sooner look at what they have to know what they can do moving forward, what needs to be done. These opportunities don't happen a lot. Injuries happen every year, but the way Washington's been hit this year has been pretty bad so far.
Yeah, well, like the old and slow, I think you could probably deem that on the defense more so than the offense, to be perfectly honest with you. Obviously, they got Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt in the backfield. Jaden Daniels is obviously not old and slow. Terry McLaurin, he still has a good step on him, even with injury banged up. Debo has always been Debo. I don't think he's lost a step. He's just a rolling bowling ball. Like Zach Ertz is the only one that really fits that bill, you could really say. Like defensively, I don't even want to say that it's like injury. It's not that they're old and slow. Like we weren't complaining about the old and slow in those first two defensive series where they're able to come back with the football. It's much more so about guys doing their jobs. So yes, do you have some pieces that have lost a step? Without a doubt. I could have told you that the summer we brought in Bobby Wagner. I saw that.
You could have said that last year.
Exactly. And I did say that, like, before the season, like, I saw him at Seattle that last season, and I was like, well, he was getting destroyed on crossers. And, like, that's one thing I'm concerned about with the linebacker position. So, like, I've known this was a thing, but the difference is if you do have that sort of piece, right? But it's so valuable in the sense of making plays on the ball and the ball carriers and stopping the run game, that if you do have younger guys that are learning newer positions and they have mental lapses, a lot of the times that one piece is going to get way more highlighted now because of where that issue is happening, right? So like when something bad happens, we want to point to a reason for why it has occurred. And I feel bad for somebody like Bobby because I ultimately believe, Colonel, that you can't really point blame as to what's going on because you don't know what's being told. Like you don't know what's being told in the meeting room on where you should be. This is on this route. This is how you play it. So a lot of those plays that Bobby's trying to catch up with people, that might not even be his responsibility, and it's just somebody else, and he's trying to make up for it, and he's getting put on blast for it, which is just unfortunate overall that we all do that. But I think that injuries would help, of course, but to be honest, I think it's just everyone being on the same page because defensively, that's your number one asset as a defense, is everyone being on the same page, doing the exact same thing they're supposed to be doing and forcing those checkdowns to come up, make a tackle. But unfortunately, that hasn't always been the case for all these games, especially in the second half last night.
Yeah, you guys pretty much hit on a lot of the points I was going to make. Like you said, you could say that the defense could be labeled as old and slow, but the offense, I mean, outside of Terry, who's 30 now, and Zach Ertz, who's 30, whatever he is, and then I think Laramie Tunsil is either 29, pushing 30, or just turned 30. Everyone else in that offense is below the age of 30, so like kind of in their prime, if you want to call it that. And then obviously you got guys like Bill, Jaden, Luke
Badass
McCaffrey,
is older.
yeah,
Too.
Jalen Lane, guys like that are still like in their young 20s, so on their first rookie contracts. So the offensive side of the ball, like, and look, if we're being honest, before we got to that Chicago game, the offense was top 7 in points, and they were top 7 in like yardage or whatever it may be, EPA, and like all the advanced metrics was like kind of favoring the offense. The only difference was they were really, 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 really good on third down last year and historically great on fourth down, which is completely flipped this year. And they're really, really like they were like 5th or 6th last year on third down. And obviously they were first on fourth downs. This year they're like 26th, 27th on third down, and probably somewhere around that range on fourth down as well. So the defense last year they had these holes, they had these inefficiencies. It was all masked by the offense and how efficient they were and how much pressure they put on opposing defenses and offenses because they were constantly scoring points. They were never really punting the ball, and they were constantly keeping the ball, possessing the ball, keeping it kind of playing keep away from the other team, putting pressure on them to actually, okay, now we got to keep up and we got to score and to keep up with these guys. This year, they're not possessing the ball long enough. They're not converting on third downs. They're not really being efficient. So it's exposing the defense, putting the defense on the field even more. And that's why you're seeing the older guys that didn't really get exposed last year are now getting exposed this year. So at the end of the day, if you want to, like, I wouldn't even be mad. Like, you can clearly see and say that the defense is kind of old and slow. The counter could be that whenever Will Harris was there, they were a little bit better in pass coverage. Whenever Dietrich Wise was in there, they were a little bit better in the run defense. You lose those two guys. Darren Armstrong leading the team in sacks and pressures. You lose him. So you're losing key components of your defense that you brought in to upgrade the defense. So now it's back to the default defense that was kind of there last year as well. So at the end of the day, look, it's kind of on AP. He built the defense. He brought these guys in. He brought a lot of the guys back from last year to add to this team this year. And the defense, yes, you can call them old and slow. The offense, not so much. Unfortunately, to win in this league, you got to play complementary football. And it just seems like when the special teams puts them in good position, field position, the offense goes 3 and out. When the offense is humming, putting up points, defense can't stop anybody. When the defense is getting turnovers, making stops, offense can't move the ball. So
Yep.
it's just the whole season is kind of like a microcosm of what I just said. There's no complimentary football as opposed to last year. It was 1,000% complimentary football.
Yeah, so this season so far for Washington, it jogged a memory. Back when I was working in Rockville, there was this very off the beaten path type of building. I can't really say exactly what type of building it was that we were working in, but it's not your typical type of building. They don't have like you walk in, you have a lobby, all other stuff. To gain access to where we were working, you had to walk through a mechanical room that was as wide as the entire building at the basement. Then you had to go work over to like your construction stairs to get all the way up the 6 flights to get up to where we were working. Well, my helper at the time, he was new, and so I was kind of helping him, and my boss was there. And he said that he had to go to the bathroom, and this was his first day on the site. And so I said, all right, well, good luck. You remember the way we went down or whatever. And then about 10 minutes later, I've been wondering, like, where is he at? And he comes back, and he's looking at me like just pissed off in the face, just no facial expression whatsoever. And I looked at my phone, and he texted me and said, I didn't make it. He had pissed himself. He didn't like pee in a corner. He pissed himself. And so I told my boss, I said, well, I think I got to go.
You tell Gene this?
Yeah. Gene, he was there.
Geez.
He was there. And so
I can only imagine his reaction.
I said, Gene, I'm going to have to take him home, dude, because I was his ride. And he was like, no, make him work. No, he's fine. He can work. I was like, dude, I'm not having him sitting in his own piss. Okay. I'm taking this guy home. But as we're walking back to the car, I finally got my way. As we're walking back to the car, the sole of his boot, the entire bottom of his boot, as we're walking, just gets ripped off and just falls off.
Damn.
So he's like waddling back to the car with me. I ended up giving him my extra pair of boots I had in the truck, and I was like, just keep them. Like I don't know if the piss made its way down to your socks, but like I was like, just keep the boots. But like that's how it feels with Washington right now, where it's like just one thing after another just cannot just get their bearings about them. It seems like we're on that long walk back to the car in the heat with one sole off the boot, just hobbling over there, just hoping to get home and
on your leg.
take a shower.
And have piss on the leg. Yeah, first day at work too.
Pissed all over yourself. It wasn't his first day, but it was his first day at that site, so he didn't know where the bathroom. He didn't know how to get out. But to this day, Gene was like, "That's the first time that's ever happened to anybody pissing themselves." It's like I know, man, but this was a crazy job site. All right, now the next question we have, Goody. AP surprised us last year with trading for Marshawn Lattimore at the trade deadline for 3 draft picks. Do you see him making any similar moves this year, or have we already used up all of our draft capital on Laramie Tunsil? On Lattimore and Laramie Tunsil?
Yeah, I don't see any big swings. I think, if it depends on where these next couple of weeks put us in terms of our record. But I don't see any big swings. The holes that we have are based off of injuries, and they're not necessarily long-term injuries. So we haven't, besides losing Dietrich for the season, I'm not sure I'm pretty sure Will Harris is not out for the year. So I feel like with the injuries that we do have, they're not season ending for the most part. So to go out and try to make a big swing and lose more draft capital for something that you're not sure of as well, because we've seen that happen last year, bringing somebody in, whether they're premier or whether they're average or whatever their status is, there's no guarantee that they're going to perform. So it is more of a risk. And that kind of just comes from seeing what that Lattimore situation looked like, even though I do have confidence that he will, figure it out. I feel like this team will figure it out, whether it's too late or not. We'll have to wait to see. But in terms of taking a big swing and giving up assets for unsure, kind of situations, doesn't seem like it makes sense to me. I think AP kind of holds tight. I believe he's going to hold tight. I don't think we're going to get ready more draft picks.
Yeah. If we were in a better position schedule-wise in the win-loss column, I would probably put more stock into it. But like currently at this moment, Colonel, there isn't like one spot on the team that you could place somebody at and to say that they're going to start winning games, in my personal opinion. Like, there really is no spot that you could point to say, if you go get this guy, everything's going to be fixed, because it's still a new guy who has to learn the system. You're talking about miscommunication, having confusion out there. And so, like, that's another aspect of this where it's just literally, it's just everyone getting back onto the same page. And to get, everyone just needs to go take a shower, get out of your piss-worn clothes and clean yourself up a little bit. And, God bless that Hakeem, man. That I felt so bad for him. I hate to talk about him on here, but it was just like, that was a good showing of what it feels like for Washington right now. But no, I don't think that we're making any moves, in my personal opinion. If they were closer, sure, but it just doesn't seem like it's the right thing to do at the moment. You ride, like, it's a lot like how I do with my fantasy team. You draft, puts you in the playoffs, and your waiver wire pickups, free agent pickups, is what wins you championships. And that's essentially what's going on with Washington right now. Is they got to be able to get those waiver wire picks.
Yeah, I'm pretty much agree with both you guys. If they were 5-3 or 6-2 instead of 3-5 right now, and heading into the second half of the season, like, okay, where we're at last year, kind of like where they're at last year with Lattimore, where it's like, okay, we're on this like crazy magical ride. Jaden Daniels is that dude that we thought he was. The offense is humming. We cannot let the defense, and especially Benjamin St. Juice, Emmanuel Forbes in the secondary, we cannot let them be the downfall of what we have going for this season right now. So you go for a guy like Lattimore, which obviously blew up in our face a little bit, hasn't lived up to the 3 draft picks that they gave away for him.
Very fair.
And so you could look at that and say, but if they were in that same position this year at 6-2 or 5-3, and they were kind of teetering on the division, winning the division, or making like a real like deep run again like they did last year, I think AP would look at the roster and say, okay, we lost Dorrance Armstrong, we lost Dietrich Wise, we have Jacob Martin, who's given us a nice production so far in his expanded role. How can we get better at pass rusher? And I think that he might go out and try to add a pass rusher if we were in a position to, like we were last year. But the fact that we're 3-5 right now, and we're coming up to, this is like we're in the gauntlet of our schedule right now, where we got Kansas City, Seattle, and Detroit, who are all top tier, like top 5-ish, top 7-ish teams in the NFL right now. So I think you just got to ride with what you got. Unfortunately, they took a big swing in this offseason, or they took a swing in this offseason to try to go a little bit more in for it, and it kind of blew up in their faces. I'm not going to be mad or hate on them for trying to go in and get this team a championship or get to a Super Bowl, because they were not inches away, but they were close last year. So I just think that, and at the end of the day, we only have 6 picks for next year. I think 4 of them are like a 4th or later. So they need, for all the people that are crying about old, slow, and blah, 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 you can't really trade away draft capital to get more veteran players. You got to start trying to build through the draft and get this team younger, faster, and more explosive. So I'm going to probably say there's a 99% chance that AP is not going to be a buyer at the trade deadline.
Yeah, Seller. I'm not even sure about Seller at this point.
I was saying that earlier, because I'm like, who on this roster would any other team really want? Like,
not only that, with how many injuries we have, I mean, can you really like? You got to have a roster.
Exactly. At that point, you're just saying, you're pretty much throwing in the white towel of, all right, this season's lost. Like,
right.
And then how's that going to look on the players, where they're like, all right, well, if the coaches are saying the season's lost, why am I going to put forth max effort going into an off season? I don't want to be injured in the off season. So that's how you really really death spiral. So I just think that, if anything, they might, like, maybe a team says, hey, we'll give you a 3rd for Daron Payne, which I don't think you can pass up that offer, especially because I don't think we have a 3rd next year. But outside of that, like, there's not really anyone on this roster that is going to bring you back any type of meaningful value in the 2026 draft.
Yeah, I agree. Now, next question. Goody, I'll go to you with this one. This is from a guy in the Discord, Luck. He says, I have a question. Why do we look so happy with losing? Like we're comfortable with it all of a sudden. Last year and all years before that, players looked down after games. I mean, I get it. You're in the NFL and doing what you love. But just looking at the Chiefs players in awe, like, thanks for blowing our doors off and embarrassing us on Monday Night Football.
I mean, I think that, I think that I don't think that's really the case. Um, I think I think they're obviously upset because they have a standard that they do have set, right? Dan Quinn has brought that to this team. We saw it last year. You can hear it throughout the entire locker room for the most part. In terms of them being content with the loss or happy about the situation, I highly doubt it. What I believe is that they are all just they have each other's backs to the point where, hey, we're not gonna spiral out. We're not gonna get fiery here. We're just gonna keep taking it on the chin, and we're gonna get back on that bike, and we're gonna get this thing going. So they're absolutely have to be frustrated. I can't imagine the tone of the conversations in some of those meeting rooms or and practices and all those other things. But for them to visibly show that, it's just not professional. And it is kind of a natural reaction. If you're frustrated, you're wearing your heart on your sleeve, you're going to show it. A lot of the media really tries to like poke the bear to really try to get people to kind of, you know, be sporadic and say things that are just to, make a story.
Yeah.
But these guys, they have a standard set and they know that they're not reaching that bar. But if one person starts spiraling out, then it trickles down, and it's just a bad recipe for a locker room. Especially, I mean, again, I'm gonna say early in the season, even though we do see a 3-game losing streak, is it? So
Yep.
you don't want to lose your marbles just yet. And I think these guys are just keeping their composure, and they do have work to do, and they have time to work on it. So I wouldn't say that they're actually happy or content with these losses by any means. Even if their body language doesn't show that they're visibly frustrated, I kind of respect that. The best thing I can say is like if you're on a plane and you have the stewardess, the people that walk around in the plane, and they know something's going wrong, but if they react in a way that it's panic, then guess what? Your whole plane is panic. You have to kind of keep your composure and just trust the captain to take care of that ship, I mean that plane and get it right. So that's how I feel.
Yeah, but we keep losing altitude, man. But I will say this, like, just to put it in perspective, Luck, I'm not disagreeing with you. I couldn't tell you what's right and wrong in this situation because I'm not on that sideline. I'm not with the guys. I would imagine that group with the gold jackets they have are not okay with what's happening and everything like that. But to put in perspective, would you rather Javon Kinlaw punching Jacob Martin in the face on the sideline, or would the alternative to what was last night? I understand what your point is. You shouldn't be happy with getting your ass kicked, and it's never fun, right? Like it's like your group of friends versus a rival group of friends meeting up in the field to fight. Best one wins, and your friends are getting their heads kicked in, and you're sitting there laughing jokes on the side. Like that's not really like the kind of response that you would expect, right? That's kind of out of the norm. You'd want everyone to be pissed off, but at the end all be all, I would take this over punching each other on the sideline. I'll just say that I'm not sure what was going on the sideline. I don't know what they showed, but I think the everyone deals with losses in their own way. It's just it can't be a team wide thing.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think they're frustrated, and just because you see one thing on the sideline doesn't, and then that short little clip of whatever the camera's showing on the sideline doesn't mean that's the entire mood for the entire 60 minutes of the game. They don't have cameras back after they leave the field in the locker rooms until like obviously they put the cameras in there. The social media teams go in there and like film the coaches speaking and whatnot, but they're not in there afterwards, like after a tough loss, or they're not in there right after the teams in the locker room and at their lockers throwing their helmets into this stuff like that. And so I do definitely think they're frustrated. And honestly, I was just reading an article from John Kime put out, I think it was either a day or two ago, and it was basically about how did Washington get to where they're at now, and he was like just explaining like the injuries, da 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 da, and then he went to a part of the article was like him talking to players after the Bears game and after the Dallas game, and I'm like paraphrase. I don't remember the exact quote, but Jeremy Reeves is one of the players that was like, "F, man, we much better than this BS that we putting on the field." And da 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 da. And then he said sorry because he's such a good guy. But yeah, that just shows goes to show you that a guy like Jeremy Reeves who wears his heart on the sleeve on the field and is very like one of the leaders for this team and one of the captains, like one of the supposed captains for this team, is passionate and he's like, "Hey, we're better than this." Da 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 da. And he's a guy that's frustrated in the locker room. So just because you see a 5-8 second clip of guys smiling or laughing or whatever it may be on the sidelines, or not like mad or pissed off, like you said, like I don't want to see guys fighting on the sideline, like Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne. That was like one of the most embarrassing moments as like a fan for me.
Getting your ass
Like
kicked.
on
Your
national
team's
TV,
fighting
yeah,
on the sideline.
you're getting your ass kicked on national TV, and you're fighting each other. Like, what are y'all doing? So, I'd much rather them just be kind of like they say you take on the personality of your leader. Who's Jaden? He's cool, calm, collective at all times. He's always smiling. So like, sure, he might be smiling on the outside, but you don't think inside he's like sitting there like, man, if I was on this field right now, like this BS wouldn't be happening, da da da, stuff like that. So guys are definitely frustrated, and I do think that once they get into the locker room, once they get into a space where there's no cameras around and stuff like that, they let their emotions out and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know. It is what it is.
I gotcha. I'm with you all the way. It's just a weird, touchy subject. The one thing I will say though is, I'm guessing what Luck is referring to is that he wants probably more of that angry, fiery leadership from Jaden, if not.
We saw Jaden. What did they show? They panned to Jaden last year in that Ravens game.
Exactly.
Sitting on the bench by himself with that mean mug, like, I ain't letting this happen again.
And I think that's what Luck is referring to. Is last year it definitely seemed like it wasn't the case, and this year it seems different.
It's a new group of guys. I mean, that's always going to be the case.
Yeah, you're right. Now let's go to our next question. This one from Tim Towner. Goody, are we unlucky or just a bad team? We had a questionable offseason, a ton of injuries, no Jaden, a pant load of turnovers, not playing complimentary football, an extremely difficult second place schedule, where opponents are getting a bye prior to playing us, let alone an international game before our bye. With all this building off an extended season where you made the NFC Championship game no pressure, what would you have done differently?
What was that last question?
What would you have done differently?
If what?
Based off all of that in the, let's say, the questionable offseason, given where we are now.
Yeah, that's really hard to put your finger on. Whether we're a bad team or if we're just unlucky, that's like glass half full, glass half empty. You really don't know, because and it's kind of like beating a dead horse here, but with the injuries that like piled up on us so early, it's hard to do anything. It's hard to move forward and kind of have that trajectory that you anticipated coming out of the off season. Bad luck, you can say bad luck as much as good luck, because we could have had a lot of good luck last year and just have a lot of bad luck this year if you want to compare the season to season. But the injuries played a huge factor in my opinion. You can't really control that. Nobody can control that. I'm sure there's ways that you can better prevent it, maybe. But I mean, it's a physical sport. It's going to happen. And you can't really choose where those injuries are going to happen in terms of on your team or in what position. But it does seem like we've had some bad luck, those turnovers that you don't really expect. Obviously going back to the Bears game, that's in the bag. It's just a ball that gets loose and the team takes it and they end up going out to win. So, I mean, you can consider that bad luck. I'm not going to say Jaden Jones is a bad quarterback because he fumbled the ball in that situation. So if I was comparing bad luck to a bad team in that situation, that would just be terrible luck. The injuries are I'm going to put my finger on. It's hard to get your ship going if you got all your players down. But it has been a little bit of a good mix of bad luck and just health.
Yeah. Sorry. I opened my garage door and it's freezing now. Our hot water heater tankless broke, so I've had to be taking cold showers. Had to take one today, bro. It is rough,
Bro, I'm
but
just gonna stink at that point. Like, I'm sorry, I'm just thinking.
no,
I
my
ain't taking no
coworker
cold
said
shower.
that to me. He's like, dude, you don't have much hair. You can go a couple. I was like, no, absolutely not, dude. Absolutely not. But are we unlucky? No. I think that's a fallacy, Tim. What would I have done differently? I don't think I would have really done anything differently besides maybe a handful of draft picks, but like AP knows way more than I do, and they had a good game plan coming into the season to do the ground and pound. That's why they brought in Connerly and Tunsil to kind of help fix the offensive line because that was a big major issue last season. So I'm not going to second guess their draft or anything like that. The only thing I would really change was how the Terry situation played out. That's huge with this football team, and that's the only thing that I would ultimately change. But are we unlucky? No, and it's obvious. I think we all, old fans and younger fans, know this alike. The NFL does not like us. Like, and it's not nothing because of the name change. Like, even back when Washington was good, they still didn't get a lot of national publicity because they were hated by Dallas. And it's a legitimate thing. I do think the scheduling aspect is questionable to say the least, but I think that teams don't like getting beat by us. That's why they usually fire people after we beat them, and they really make a point to make sure that they face us well, that they come in with the right preparation. And when you garner respect, you're going to get the best out of somebody else when you're facing them in a competition, in a competitive setting. And it just seems like we have not gotten used to that stage yet. And that's all right. It's a growing thing, but are we unlucky? The injuries are, of course, an issue that are going to come up. But regardless, you got to win football games. Doesn't matter, like when you're talking about D-Day, they lost 3,000 soldiers, and they still somehow made it up the beach and cleared the beach for us to get on into Normandy. And so you could talk about injuries all day long. That's fine, but you still have a job to do. There's still something to do and to get done, and there's no excuses.
Yeah, I'll say it's probably a little mix of both. Like, they're probably not as unlucky as most people think they are, and they're probably not as a bad team as most people think they are, especially going through this little stretch they are right now. But I would say that they're a little bit unlucky because, look, teams deal with injuries, but like it's usually like a depth player here and a couple players here. It's never like you're starting one of your starting running backs, both your defensive ends, your starting safety, like just all like your starting quarterback, like it's just all across the board, just starter after starter after starter. And the like you see a team like the Lions last year who had like 14, 15 guys on IR, injured, whatever it may be. They didn't make excuses. Well, the team didn't make excuses
They did.
because no, the
They
fan base,
did though.
the fans of the team made excuses. And I would say the players, they did say like, yeah, we were missing players, da 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 da. But at the end of the day, that's a team that had been drafting and building for 3 years. So they were layered with guys that,
Right.
okay, this guy went down, we have another guy here. Okay, that guy went down, and we have another guy here. Whereas this team, obviously, we know the history before the AP and Dan took over the last like 3-4 years of that regime and how there's no draft picks and da 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 da. So when a team like this takes hits at the starting positions, you don't really have the depth behind them because you don't have those couple years of layered draft picks on your roster to kind of make up for the injuries here and there. So I would do say that like they're a little bit unlucky because this regime, although they did turn over a lot of the roster, they're still not exactly where they want to be as far as like young and talented and all that type of stuff. And then the injuries just compounded on that. And then when your starting quarterback gets injured, comes back and gets injured again, it's kind of like just stuff keeps compounding. So a little bit unlucky in that sense, but I would say they're also still kind of a bad team because bad teams play undisciplined football. Bad teams give up a lot of like boneheaded mistakes and plays. Bad teams give up communication issues 8 weeks into a season that were the issues the first 2 weeks of the season. So I think that
He's missed tackles. A lot of tackles.
bad teams miss a lot of tackles week in and week out. Now they did tackle pretty good last night, so I'll give them that. That's kind of the thing where I'm like, they are kind of a bad team because the issues from the previous weeks were tackling and communication, like issues on the back end, the crossing routes. Now it seems like they kind of fixed the crossing routes and they've fixed the tackling, but there's still communication issues. Now it's different communication issues because the younger guys are in there and not really experienced yet. So I just think that, like I said, I don't think they're as bad as people think they are, and I don't think they're as unlucky as people think they are. I think it's just a combination of both, and then you just got everything compounded onto each other that it just made this season it kind of remind you of like the seasons of the Redskins of my entire life, where it's just like,
Right.
all right, they have a good couple plays, they string a couple drives together, they take a step forward against LA, like, all right, we're getting back on track, and then they take 3 steps back and they lose to Chicago, they lose to Dallas, they lose to Kansas City, they look lifeless and stuff like that. So I just think that, yeah, it's just all the above, basically.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Sorry, my daughter is with me now. Just holding her off for a little bit. But last question that we have, Goody. This from Chris Comerton. Can the Commanders' offensive line hold up against the Seahawks' elite pass rush without Tunsil? Or will pressure force Daniels into critical turnovers / mistakes?
Another test. We know the Seahawks defense. He brings over a good defense, and they've been playing really well, the Seahawks. In terms of the offensive line, whether protecting Jaden or protecting Mariota, Jaden, we're not sure if he's actually still playing. It's just another test for this team. You know, again, I'm really about considering AP's second year. I'm really about trying to see what the guts of this team has. And again, you don't really get to see that if you have all of your starters healthy throughout the season, which, you know, there's an optimistic to it, whereas you have your starters playing and you're playing good football and getting a lot of wins. Whereas if they're banged up and they're out, you have to have guys step up. And you get to see how these guys play. These guys get more experience. And then that gives you a little bit more juice moving into the offseason, knowing what you really need versus assuming or guessing. So, you know, I'm not gonna doubt them. You know, they're all professional football players. They know what they're going up against. They're gonna study. They're gonna practice, and just have to get prepared. You know, they can't line up against this team. Who can they line up against, right? So, you know, seeing these younger guys getting in there, seeing the line mix up a little bit, it's gonna be a test, and I think they can do it. Whether it's Mariota, whether it's Jaden back there. They just gotta, you know, when the ball kicks off and the game starts, just play your game. You know, don't think about too much of this. Don't think about who's missing. Think about who you're going up against. Just play your game. Play your game. We had a chance last night. You know, we were in a position for an extended period of time where we could have imposed ourselves against them. So I would just say for the team, you know, moving to next week against Seattle's defense, you know, they're a good defense, but I mean, all you gotta do is do your job.
Yeah, I agree with you. With like this is easily fixable if you're able to run the football well. Because if you're able to run the football well, then that kind of mitigates the pass rush. You're able to use your play action passing off of that, and that'll be able to help out that offensive line that much more. You don't have to chip as much on those edges, right? If they do have an elite pass rush, like with Leonard Williams, of course. But like that's the kind of issue is that can Washington step up and be able to control the time of possession, the ground game, to be able to help out that pass rush a little bit. That's the big step that's needed. And do you trust Brandon Coleman at left tackle to be able to come in and be able to help you out with that? That's the question that needs to be desired. But overall, if there was any unit on this team that could deal with losing Laramie Tunsil, a player of his caliber, I would say the offensive line has plenty of reserves to kind of help out in this kind of regard. But even though before the season I said the one player Washington could not mortgage to lose was Laramie Tunsil, I still feel that way just because of what he offers and not having to have chip help and knowing that you got the left side locked down. So it's unfortunate that it's happening, but I think running the football well is how it gets done, brother. And can they be able to do that? And we'll see.
Yeah, I think that this line has proven itself a couple times where going into week one, a lot of people said, how are they going to be able to block this ferocious Giants defensive line? They have four pass rushers that can come from anywhere, and they just added Abdul Carter. They did pretty well against the Giants. And then the next week it was, well, they got Max Crosby coming in. How are they going to be able to block him?
Right.
And he got off against Josh Connerly, yes, but they ran the ball all over the Raiders that game as well. And then it was this Chargers defense. They're really tough. They're a top unit. Da 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 da. They Bill and Jaden went ham all over them. So this line and this offense has shown improved Chiefs defense with Jaden out last night. Marcus Mariota in there, Terry and Debo back, moving the ball up and down the field, just couldn't capitalize and score points when they needed to. So this offense and this offensive line has shown that they're going to be able to block guys. They're going to be able to move the ball on defenses. It's just about, are you going to be able to be efficient on third downs? Are you going to be able, like you said, be able to run the ball to mitigate that pass rush? Are you going to be able to run some trap plays, some draw plays to kind of keep that defensive line off balance? Are you going to get the side to side, like not the vertical, the horizontal passing game going, so you make the defensive linemen run sideline to sideline to tire them out to slow down that pass rush? So there's different ways that Cliff can hopefully attack this defense. I know people are mad about the play calling last night, especially in the second half. But again, go back to that first half. Cliff was dialing them up pretty good. So I just think that he needs to stay consistent with his play calling, stay consistent with the running game. I think if Jaden's back, I think the running game will be a little bit more improved just because he's also a huge threat in the running game as well. And defense has got to account from him more than they do for a guy like Mariota, who can still like run the ball and be athletic, but obviously he's not Jaden Daniels. So I do think that if they have a good game plan, they can run the ball and Cliff doesn't overthink things and overanalyze the offense and just try to do too much on offense. I do think they'll be able to not only hang with Seattle, beat Seattle, but definitely mitigate that pass rush and move the ball on that defense.
I'm with you. Corey. Do you want to say hi? Oh, okay. You don't want to say hi? You're being shy now? A couple things Deluxe said in the YouTube comments. It's not just the injuries, it's the quantity at the same time. Spread these out and the young guys get action spread out instead of all at once would be different. He's sort of right about that. Love you, Corey. Good night, baby. Good night, baby. I'll say the one question that Arch has is, what did you think of Tyler Owens' performance? And it's really hard to gauge overall, but the mental hiccups I think are normal for a young guy, so it's hard to really get on him about it. But there were times where he was useful. You saw the speed on the field, and that's something in the size as well. It was obvious that knowing that Kansas City was going to be using two tight ends a lot, that's why they brought Owens in to kind of take out one of those. It's just we don't know if we're going to be going against an offense like that every single week, but he was obviously in the net positive, in my personal opinion. Hall?
Yeah. Him, guys like McGee, the younger guys, you definitely saw them on the field, and the speed definitely stood out as opposed to like guys like Bobby Wagner,
Right.
and stuff like that. So you could definitely see the speed, the burst. Like you said, there was mental lapses here and there, but at the end of the day, that's probably the most playing time, the most significant playing time he's had since a regular or a preseason game. So it's going to take some time for guys like that to get acclimated to like the actual NFL like offensive game and play in and play out and like different concepts, route concepts, and playing with this guy as opposed to playing with backup Steve on the practice squad. So I think overall he had a pretty good game, and hopefully he'll keep building. Him and McGee will keep building. By the end of the year, we'll be looking at guys like McGee, Owens, Johnny Newton. Hopefully Mikey turns it around and starts playing a little bit better. And we'll be looking at, okay, this young core of guys that AP drafted that showed out last year kind of got their groove back. And now in 2026, hopefully they'll take another step forward.
Goody, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'm just gonna go off of what Hall's saying, but you name these guys. The depth of this team in just his 2 years here, I mean, year and a half, you see some identity with the young guys that we have on his team. Like you just rang off a few names: McGee, Owens, Newton, Sanders. These are going to be the cornerstones. So for them to take their lumps, I mean, going from highs to lows, it's hard to deal with, right? So last year was obviously a very super high. This year we're having to kind of manage and deal with some more adversity. That brings character, right? So if these guys are going to be on your roster for at the least the next 3 to 4 or 5 years or so, you got something you can really build off of with having these young guys. On top of that, you have Wagner in there, in that room, just showing you day in and day out what it takes to be a Hall of Famer in this league and be well respected. What it takes to step forward. So I feel like this is a good mix. It's a good recipe that we have. I really don't have any sort of pushback towards AP and his decisions that he's made so far. I feel like it's way too soon, but I do see I see the light. I see the silver lining, like you said. Those names that you just rang off, you could see something there.
Yep, absolutely. That's going to wrap us up for this episode, guys. I can't thank you enough. If you've made it this far, you're a frickin' champion. If you don't mind, you wouldn't mind liking and subscribing. We really appreciate it. We love you guys for watching, taking some time out and listening to us just yabber on about a terrible game.
Hey, I was going to say, if they can bear through that game last night, they can bear through this.
Yeah, that's true. That's what Reed usually says Saturdays. All right, everybody. That's going to wrap us up for this episode. We'll see you guys again on Friday, highlighting the Seattle game on Sunday Night Football. My coworker, a Seattle fan, is going to be at the game. So if you see Big Mike, just don't mess with him. He's a good guy. All right, everybody. I'm Kyle.
I'm Hole.
Goody.
And we'll see you guys again on Friday. Washington football. Woo! What's up, everyone? This is Kyle from the Burgundy Zone. We are releasing our own merch to support the show. If you want to rock the Burgundy Zone logo or you want to see Reed's face on your shirt, we got it. We're starting with t-shirts, hoodies, and zip-up. So if you're a fan of the show, make sure you snag one before they are gone. Check out the link in our bio on Instagram, or you can find the link in the description of the